For almost 10 years, I worked nonstop so my husband could finish medical school and build his career, and the moment he finally became a doctor, he told me I'd been holding him back. My name is Emily Gray, and this happened in Charlotte, North Carolina. When I met Ryan Kelly, we were both 23 and just starting our adult lives. Ryan had just been accepted into medical school. Everyone around him talked about how impressive that was. His family, his friends, even people who barely knew him. They all said the same thing. Ryan is going to be a doctor. He had the intelligence for it too. Ryan was the kind of person who could read something once and understand it immediately. Professors loved him. He had that calm confidence that made people believe in his future. I believed in it too. At the time, I had already started my career as an accountant at a mid-sized company in Charlotte. Medical school was about to take over his life. The first year we dated was easy. We met after work, grabbed cheap dinners, watched movies in my apartment. Ryan spent most of his time studying, but he always tried to make time for us. What no one really talks about with medical school is how expensive it is. Tuition, textbooks, exam fees, lab equipment, the costs piled up quickly. Ryan had student loans, but they didn't cover everything. Rent still had to be paid. Groceries still had to be bought. Bills didn't stop just because someone was studying to become a doctor. At first, I just helped here and there. If we went out to eat, I'd pay. If Ryan was short on groceries that week, I'd pick them up. But the longer medical school went on, the more obvious it became that Ryan simply couldn't work. He studied constantly, 12 hours a day sometimes. So eventually we decided to move in together. Mostly because it made financial sense. We found a small apartment in Charlotte. Nothing fancy. Old carpet, thin walls, tiny kitchen. But the rent was cheap. Once we were living together, the financial balance shifted almost completely onto me. My salary as an accountant covered most of the rent. I paid the utilities. Groceries usually went on my card. Ryan always noticed. Some nights he'd sit across from me at the kitchen table while I was reviewing spreadsheets from work and say quietly, "I hate that you're carrying everything." And every time I'd tell him the same thing. It's temporary. Because that's what we both believed. Medical school wasn't forever. Once Ryan became a doctor, everything would change. During Ryan's second year of medical school, we got married. It was simple. A courthouse ceremony in Charlotte with a few close friends and family. My parents were there. My mom, Laura Bennett, pulled me aside during dinner afterward. She works as a social worker, which means she notices patterns in people. She looked at me seriously and said, "Just make sure you're building a life together, not just building his life." At the time, I brushed it off. Ryan was always grateful. Whenever someone asked how he managed medical school, he'd say, "Emily makes it possible." He'd squeeze my hand when he said it. And hearing that always made the long hours feel worth it. The years that followed were exhausting. Ryan studied constantly. Clinical rotations. Hospital shifts. Endless exams. Meanwhile, my life was simple but demanding. Work during the day. Overtime whenever it was available. Making sure our bills stayed paid. Some nights I'd come home late and find Ryan asleep on the couch with medical textbooks open around him. And every time I saw that, I reminded myself why we were doing this. We were building a future. Years passed like that. Medical school eventually turned into residency. Ryan's hours somehow became even worse. Sometimes he'd leave the apartment before sunrise and come home after midnight. But by that point, we had already been together nearly 8 years. 8 years of sacrifice. 8 years of believing we were building something together. Then Ryan finally finished residency. And everything changed. When he got his first real job as a doctor, his salary jumped overnight. Suddenly, the years of financial pressure disappeared. Within months, we moved out of our old apartment and bought a house in a quiet suburb outside Charlotte. For a while, it felt like the dream had finally come true. But success changed Ryan. Not all at once. Slowly. At first, it was just his schedule. He started spending more time with coworkers from the hospital. Doctors. Nurses. People who understood the world he worked in. I was happy for him. But eventually I started noticing something different in the way he talked about our past. One night we went to dinner with a few people from the hospital. During the conversation, someone asked how long Ryan and I had been together. "Almost 10 years, Ryan said. I smiled and joked, "Yeah, I supported him through medical school, so I think I've earned bragging rights." Everyone laughed. It was meant to be a light joke. But on the drive home, Ryan was unusually quiet. Finally, he said something that caught me off guard. "You bring that up a lot." I looked at him. "Bring what up?" "The fact that you supported me." I frowned. I was joking. Ryan kept his eyes on the road. "Sometimes it sounds like you think you made my career happen." The comment stunned me. "I never said that." "I know," he said. "But it feels that way." That was the first time I realized Ryan didn't see those years the way I did. To me, they were sacrifice. To him, they were a debt he didn't want to owe. And that quiet resentment was about to tear our marriage apart. After that conversation in the car, things between Ryan and me changed. Not dramatically. Just enough that I could feel it. Ryan started going out more with coworkers from the hospital. Dinner after shifts. Drinks with other doctors. Networking events. At first, he invited me. But eventually those invitations stopped. It's mostly hospital talk, he'd say. You'd be bored. I tried to believe him. But the truth was simpler. Ryan had entered a new world. A world where everyone around him was successful, ambitious, and highly educated. Compared to that, my job as an accountant suddenly seemed small. One evening we attended another dinner with people from the hospital. During the conversation someone asked what I did for work. Before I could answer fully, Ryan smiled and said casually, "Emily handles numbers while I handle life or death decisions." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But something about the way he said it felt dismissive. The drive home that night was quiet. Halfway there Ryan suddenly said, "Our relationship started on an unhealthy foundation." I turned toward him. "What does that mean?" Ryan sighed. "For years you supported me financially. I always felt like I owed you." "You didn't owe me anything," I said. "But that's how it felt." I stared at him. "I supported you because I loved you." Ryan didn't respond. A few months later he told me he needed space. We were sitting in our kitchen when he said it. "I think we should spend some time apart." The words felt unreal. "Are you serious?" "I just need to figure out what I want." Ryan moved into a short-term apartment across Charlotte a few weeks later. 3 months after that, he asked to meet for coffee. We sat across from each other at a quiet cafe. Ryan got straight to the point. "I think we should get divorced." No anger. No emotion. Just a decision. The legal process started soon after. That's when I met Peter Ward, the divorce lawyer recommended by my coworker Maria Foster, a project manager. During our first meeting, Peter asked a question I hadn't expected. "Did you financially support your husband while he was in medical school?" "Yes," I said. "For years." Peter nodded. "You should know that courts sometimes consider that when determining divorce settlements." I had never even thought about that. To me, those years were just part of our marriage. But when Ryan heard about it, he reacted immediately. During one meeting with both lawyers present, he looked directly at me and said, "So this was the plan?" "What plan?" "You support me early on, then cash out once I become successful." The accusation shocked me. "That's not what this is." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "It sure looks like it." The negotiations lasted months. Eventually a settlement was reached. It acknowledged the years I spent supporting our life while Ryan built his career. Nothing extreme. Just recognition that those sacrifices mattered. The final hearing took place at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. After everything was finished, Ryan and I stood outside the courtroom. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then Ryan finally said, "You got what you wanted." I shook my head. "This isn't what I wanted." Ryan studied me for a second before speaking again. "I hope it was worth it." Then he walked away. And just like that, the person I spent almost a decade supporting disappeared from my life. The settlement didn't make me rich, but it gave me something important. A fresh start. Ryan is still a successful doctor in Charlotte. I'm still working as an accountant. My life is quieter now. But sometimes I think about those early years. The tiny apartment. The nights I worked overtime while Ryan studied. The promises we made. And I still wonder something. When you spend years helping someone build their future, do they owe you anything once they finally succeed? Or did I become the villain the moment I accepted what the court said I deserved?